Hello everybody, this is Graham. I'm one of the reviewers here in the Dice Tower, and today I'm going to be presenting my top 10 games of 2023. Now this is always the time of year when I get a chance to look back at all the games I played during the year and find out, which ones really stuck with me. And this was a good year and produced for me a wide variety of games that I ended up really enjoying. Some of them I was expecting to like, and some of them were complete surprises. So without further ado, let's get into my top 10 games of 2023. My number 10 game is Solar 175. This is a legacy style game where we're going to be going through a series of games which are going to be adding more and more to the gameplay and adding new rules and components, etc. Now the main mechanism of this one is one of my favorite, and that's bag building. You start the game with 4 different color tokens in your bag and you draw them out up to your hand limit and assign them to the different actions on your player board. When the actions have the required tokens, you take that action, but it may not be filled for several turns depending on what you draw from the bag. And the actions are going to be pretty straightforward. Get more tokens for your bag, move your ship, build a base, or do some voting. Now one of the really interesting things about this one is there's no set way to score at the beginning of the game. As the game progresses, you can control how much each of the 3 major point items are going to be worth. There's also a voting action where you can secretly fill out ballots, which can influence the points for each of these as well. Now the reason why this one's number 10 and not higher is I've only played the game 5 or 6 times, and I'm only partway through the campaign. I really like the actions and the flow of this one, but I'm not 100% sold on that scoring. It's a little too swingy for me in the early games. So that's keeping it lower on my top 10, but I'm still really interested to see where this game is going. So that's my number 10, Solar 175. Number 9 on my list is one that really surprised me, and that is Nor. Again, I'm not 100% sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I'm trying to use the phonetic spelling I found on Wikipedia. Now this is a fun little filler game, not sure that's the right word here. It's a 30-minute game, but the gameplay is very engaging. You're either going to be playing a card from your hand or going on a voyage to distant lands. So when playing a card from your hand, you're going to be adding it to your crew. If the color matches a previously played card or cards, you add it to that column and collect the assets from all the cards in that colored column. And the card you draw back is going to be based on the one you just played. There are 5 colored sections on the main board, with 1 card underneath each one, and let's say you play a yellow card, you're going to take the card that's under the yellow section of the main board. And seeing what you're going to get next is just a whole lot of fun, I found. Do you play the card for the rewards you get now, or do you play it for the card you're going to get back from playing this card now? And I just found that a whole lot of fun. And it helps that every turn you're getting something. You're either getting assets, or you're able to travel to distant lands and get points, and probably some more assets as well. This is one of those games that every time I play, I'm reminded just how fun it is. The one thing that keeps this moving up on my list is that I felt there was one aspect of the game that was maybe a bit unbalanced. I may be wrong, of course, but that's what I felt. So that's my number 9 of the year, Nor. My number 8 game is actually a word game, and that's Literati. This is mainly on my list because of how well it worked for non-gamers. Anyone who's into word games, I say, hey, do you want to play a cooperative word game about spelling? And it's gone over very well in most cases. Not a game I'm going to leave them with, but having a gamer at the table to handle the kind of the gamery parts of the game and let the word people concentrate on the word aspect has worked out really well for me. It also helps that I also really like word games. Players start with a book which will have the types of words they need to spell. Either a topic, like words about money, or it could be word construction, like words with double vowels. Players then draw tiles from the bag and start a timer, and you're trying to fulfill the requirements of your book, but you're also trying to help the other players around the table. You can pass letters or words to the other players, and people are going to be calling what they need or what they have, and although it can be a bit chaotic, it's still a whole lot of fun. At the end of each round, you assess if there are too many letters left over, which of course is bad, then you reveal the top threat card and do what it says. And it is always bad, like each player loses their longest words, or players discard 3 letters each. Now each player is required to complete a certain number of books, then as a group you must finish a final book together to win the game. Now I may not want to play this every week, but if I want to play a word game or have somebody over who likes word puzzles, then this is going to be my go-to game to get off the shelf. And that's why Literati is number 8 of my games of the year. Number 7 of the year is Ahau, Rulers of the Yucatan, a game set in the classical period of the Maya. Now this one's on this list mainly because of a combination of the theme and the mechanisms. The theme is a fascinating look into the ancient Mayan culture with a beautiful board and components. Unfortunately, the look of the game does get in the way of the usability, but it is such a beautiful board. It's hard to pinpoint the main mechanism of this game as well. I mean, you're playing cards to determine where your ruler is going to go, and you have to play all your cards normally before you can pick them back up, and that's kind of a mechanism I really like. And if two rulers end up in the same spot, there's going to be a conflict, and one ruler will be forced to move. But it doesn't matter where your ruler is going to go, you're going to be able to take a pyramid tile from wherever they end up. Now, once the rulers are down, you're going to be placing a worker on one of the surrounding cities of where you placed your ruler, and each city is dedicated to a god. You can then summon a god, and its strength is dependent on the number of your workers in that city you just placed in. Then you can activate the city that you just placed your worker in to either build a building or deplete a neighboring resources. And this depletion of the resources is going to be the timer of each round. Of course, there's going to be buildings to build, pyramids to build using those pyramid tiles you're able to click up. And I know what you're thinking. What the heck am I going on about? And that's kind of why I like this game. There are so many interconnected gears, and you have to decide what you want to do and then kind of work backwards. Like, I want to build this building here, but I need the resources. So I have to deplete this quarry, which means I need to have a worker here, which means I need my ruler here, which means I have to play this card. Oh, but if I place a worker here, can I use this god's ability to my advantage? And that level of planning is just something I really enjoy in games. But I understand why some people may not like that, but it still gets my 7th spot on my games of the year. Number 6 is almost on the complete opposite side of the complexity scale, and the game is In the Footsteps of Darwin. What a truly fun, fast game. I was not expecting to enjoy my plays of this one really as much as I did. On a player's turn, they're going to be taking one of the 3 animals that are in line with the HMS Beagle, which is the ship. Then place the animal in the matching spot on your own player board, and then replace it on the main section. And then depending on how far away from the ship the animal was, you move that ship 1, 2, or 3 spaces. And the ship's going to kind of go around the 9 squares in a circle. Each animal will give you something, either points or more scouts, maps, or compasses, which are used for scoring. Then you also have an objective at the beginning of the game, and they're going to be nice and simple to understand. Get 1 point for each animal in these 4 spaces on your player board, or get 1 point for each bird you have on your board. And you can get, of course, more objectives as the game goes on. And the game only lasts for exactly 12 rounds. And everyone I've played this game with has really enjoyed themselves. The game looks great and plays so quickly and smoothly, it's easy to get people to play this one. But still enjoyable enough that even after my repeated plays, I'm still enjoying this one when it hits the table. So my number 6 game of the year is In the Footsteps of Darwin. My number 5 game of the year is a little bit of a surprise that it landed here. As soon as I had heard this game was coming out, I pre-ordered as soon as I could, then waited over a year for it to be delivered. But I knew I was going to love this game based on the publisher's track record. The publisher is Splatterspellen, and the game is Horseless, Carriages. So why am I surprised it ended up in 5th on my top games of the year? Because I'd assumed it was going to go right to number 1 game, hands down. Previously, that's what's happened with other Splatter games. I have 2 Splatter games in my top 10 games of all time, and I have 4 of them in my top 100 games of all time. Splatter is always an instant buy for me as I love their design philosophy. And honestly, with that high bar, I found Horseless, Carriages just not reaching the height that I had hoped for. And it kind of falls, for me anyway, as a second tier of Splatter games for me. I still really enjoy the game, but it's just not as much as I had hoped. The game is about the early days of the automobile manufacturing. Each player has a manufacturing floor and will be playing kind of a polyomino game to try and build cars and construction lines with the items people want. And of course, the whims of the public will change over time, so being able to produce cars that people want is critical for this game. Beyond the factory floor, the players will be manipulating the customer demand, turn order, which is going to be critical to make sure your cars that are expensive are purchased first. There's going to be marketing and a few other things as well. Reading the other players is always critical to making sure that you're 1 step ahead of them and not 1 step behind. Now, this is one game on my list that I think will go up in my liking, as I see potential for my plays that there is something I really do enjoy in this one. But my current number of plays, it falls into my 5th favorite game of 2023. My number 4 game of the year is a 4-player only game about the Mafia War in Sicily in the 1980s. And that is La Familia, the Great Mafia War. Now, I went into this game honestly not really liking the theme and not being a huge fan of the area control mechanism. But this is a 4-player only game that is actually team play. And that, I found out, is something, when combined with area control, I really ended up liking. Now, this game is split into 2 halves every round. The first half is all about taking actions, and you do this by moving influence tokens from the top of the board to empty action spaces on the bottom of the board. But you can use anybody's influence tokens, including neutral ones, but using other people's means you have to pay them. The actions you are taking are going to be pretty standard. Get more people, deploy them to areas, collect money, or place orders for soldiers. But the action selection is very intriguing, as there are many ways to manipulate it to your advantage through taking some more powerful and more expensive actions. And once all the influence tokens have been used, you resolve all the orders that were issued during that first phase. These are going to be either defensive or offensive, but you won't know what the other team has done until those orders are revealed. You know, they're placing orders during the first part of the round, but they're not resolved until later, so trying to decipher why your opponents are placing that order there is always part of that fun gameplay. Unfortunately, there are a lot of rules you need to remember for this game, and combined with the fact that it's only 4 players is why it's ended up in my 4th position, but still one I highly recommend. So this is my 4th game of the year, La Familia, The Great Mafia War. For my number 3 game, it's another legacy game on this list, and that is Sagrada Artisans. Now, I didn't think Sagrada needed legacy treatment, but I'm very glad they did. It starts off like regular Sagrada, where you're going to be drafting colored dice to fill in spaces on your window on your player board. No 2 adjacent spaces can share the same number or color, and some of the spaces are pre-filled in with one or the other. I've always liked that original Sagrada game as something that is easy to play, but still gave me a puzzle, on how the heck am I going to achieve all my goals that I want to. Sagrada Artisans keeps the basic idea, but starts to add something every round, which causes the puzzle, that is the puzzle on how to score the most points, to become more and more complex. And I really enjoyed the way that they did that. This one never veers too far away from the original, so the basics always feel familiar, but things that were added and how they were added were immensely enjoyable. This is one of the games on this list that I've played multiple times in one day. And this is one that when we finished playing it, my wife wanted to either get a recharge pack or just buy a whole brand new copy so we could play through it again. So that's why my number 3 game of the year is Sagrada Artisans. My number 2 game of the year is one that I knew was going to be on my list as soon as I played it for the first time. The game is Earth, and it's a tableau engine building game. You'll be placing cards into a grid in front of you, trying to maximize all the different scoring options on cards, which is something I just love. On a player's turn, the lead player will decide on an action. Then all other players can do the same action to a lesser extent. Again, another thing I love. Because everyone is involved on every turn. And the turns are pretty quick as the actions are pretty straightforward. But the strategy comes into trying to decide which scoring options you're going to go for this time. There are public goals where the first person to complete them will get the maximum number of points, but you also have personal goal cards, and the flora and fauna cards you play in front of you are going to be worth points and maybe give you other scoring opportunities. These flora and fauna cards can also boost actions you take. So if you take the blue action, you get the base blue action, but then every blue card in your tableau could potentially trigger. It's always fun to get that chain of cards triggering, and that's probably why I love this game so much. Every time I sit down and play this game, there's a different way to score points, and I have to adjust to the new situation. And even that can fluctuate during gameplay, where you might decide to forego one scoring opportunity because of a card you just picked up. This game is just a whole lot of fun, and one I'm eagerly looking to get back to the table soon. So that's why it's my number 2 game in 2023. And finally, my top game of the year is one that I got just a few months ago, but it might be my most played game of 2023, as it's another one that I've played multiple times in a day, back to back. And that game is Darwin's Journey. Now this is a worker placement game where each turn you're going to be placing out a worker to take an action. But each worker has a set of skills, and most action spaces require certain skills. If a worker doesn't have those skills, they can't take the action. But of course, there is actions you can take to train your workers to get more skills. The theme in this one is also another reason why I love this game. The idea of helping Darwin by going to the different islands to research new species and get them back to the museum is just a fun one and well integrated in this game. And this is actually the second game featuring Darwin on my top games of 2023. Every once in a while you come across a game that just seems to check all the boxes that you really love in games. I like the tightness of this one. You'll not be able to do everything you want as there's only a limited number of rounds, and each round you're only going to be taking 5 actions, usually. Or the fact that you'll need to be pre-planning everything. Money is reasonably tight early on in this game, and if you're going to be taking an action where someone has already gone for it, you have to pay for it. So there's that good turn angst of making sure you can do what you want to do as long as you have enough money. This is hands down my favorite game of the year. When compiling this list, I knew this was going to be number 1. Then I just kind of worked my way down for all the other games. There was never any question of any other game surpassing this one from the games I played this year. This is my type of game to a T. So it had to be my number 1 game of the year. And that's it for my top 10 games of 2023. There have been a lot of great games I got to play this year. And I'm always looking for the next game to play, but with these top 10 games, I'm always happy when one of them hits the table again. Anyway, that's it for now. As always, thanks for watching.